Welcome to Lesson 5 in this series covering American government and politics. The lesson has been created to support the teaching of A-Level politics. In this lesson, we consider the powers and functions of Congress. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to answer the following questions. What powers does each chamber of Congress have? What joint powers do the House of Representatives and Senate share? And why is the Senate sometimes viewed as more powerful or influential than the House? Let's begin by considering the powers held by both chambers of Congress. Firstly, the principal responsibility of Congress is the enactment of legislation. Article 1 of the Constitution provides Congress all legislative powers herein granted. Bills can be initiated in either chamber, but have to pass through both before they are sent to the President for signing into law. Over 15,000 bills were introduced during the 117th Congress from 2021 to 2022. For example, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed by both the House and Senate and then signed by President Biden in 2021. Secondly, Congress has responsibility for all appropriation bills and what is known as the power of the purse. All operations of the federal government must be allocated funds by Congress. These are known as appropriations. Without appropriations, the federal government cannot function. The ability to deny or withdraw funding to constrain the president's actions is known as the power of the purse. The power of the purse can also be used to urge states to follow federal policy. In rare cases, when the President and Congress refuse to agree on appropriations, there will be a federal government shutdown where government services stop operating and federal employees go into unpaid furlough. Let's look at some examples of the power of the purse in action. The power of the purse can be used to bring to an end military action. For example, Congress ended the Vietnam War in 1974 by ending funding for South Vietnam. In 1994, Congress used the power of the purse to end funding for Operation Restore Hope in Somalia. The power of the purse can also be used to urge states to implement or follow federal policy. For example, under the Affordable Care Act of 2010, states had to accept an expansion of Medicaid or lose all Medicaid funding. The Supreme Court later declared this unconstitutional. The power of the purse has also been used to limit some important presidential policies. President Biden had to reduce assistance to Ukraine in 2024 following congressional opposition. And in 2018, Congress refused Trump appropriations for constructing the border wall. This led to a standoff and a 35-day federal government shutdown. Thirdly, Congress has responsibility for oversight of the executive. Congress exercises its oversight role mainly through its standing and select committees. The committees will investigate matters related to their policy speciality and question members of the executive. For example, in 2024, the House Oversight Committee conducted hearings to investigate Secret Service conduct during the Trump assassination attempt. Congressional oversight powers and their effectiveness will be covered in a later lesson. Fourthly, Congress may override a presidential veto. Congress may override presidential vetoes with a 2/3 majority in both Senate and House. President Trump vetoed 10 bills during his first term. Only one was overridden. This matches historical averages. There have been 390 vetoes since the Kennedy administration, and 39 have been overridden. Fifthly, initiating constitutional amendments. Both chambers are able to initiate constitutional amendments, passing these with a two-thirds majority. Constitutional amendments proposed during the 117th Congress covered topics including flag desecration, balancing the budget, congressional term limits, and limiting the size of the Supreme Court to 9 justices. As we have analyzed in a previous lesson, successful amendments to the Constitution are very rare. Sixthly, another aspect of oversight of the other branches of government is Congress' responsibility for impeachment and impeachment trials. The House may impeach officials for treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. The House impeaches. It formally presents any charge. The Senate then conducts a trial. Trials of elected officials have never resulted in conviction. All convictions are of federal judges. President Trump was impeached in 2018 for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, and in 2020 for insurrection. In both cases, he was acquitted by the Senate. Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached as Homeland Security Secretary in 2024, but acquitted by the Senate. Only one Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached, Sam Chase, in 1804. He was acquitted. There have only been 22 impeachments since 1789, including 4 presidents and 2 cabinet secretaries. Only 8 officials have been found guilty by the Senate. All were federal judges. Seventhly, Congress has the power to confirm an appointed vice president. The 25th Amendment gives Congress the power to confirm appointments to fill vacancies in the vice presidency if an incumbent resigns or dies in office. In reality, this is very rare. Spiro Agnew resigned as vice president in 1973 and was replaced by Gerald Ford. Eighthly, Congress has the power to declare war. Congress has the power to declare war, with both chambers required to agree. The last declaration of war was against Romania in 1942. However, Congress rarely formally declares war. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 requires the President seek approval for military action after 90 days. In some cases, the President will seek approval before or after deployment, in accordance with the War Powers Resolution. For example, the Iraq Resolution of 2002 was passed before the 2003 Iraq War. In other cases, the President will not ask Congress for approval. For example, in 2024, President Biden launched airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen without congressional approval. Finally, Congress elects the President and Vice President in the event of an electoral college tie. Congress chooses the President and Vice President if there is a tie in the Electoral College in a process called a contingent election. Contingent elections have occurred in 1801, 1825, and 1837. Now let's consider powers exclusive to the Senate. The Senate must confirm by simple majority any appointment made by the President. These include cabinet secretaries, senior military officers, Supreme Court justices, federal judges, and ambassadors. Appointees will undergo questioning in a confirmation hearing before a Senate vote. For example, in 2022, Ketanji Brown Jackson was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Biden and confirmed by the Senate in a 53-47 vote. In modern times, Senate rejections are rare. The last cabinet secretary to fail confirmation was John Tower, appointed as Secretary of Defense in 1989. The last Supreme Court justice to fail confirmation was Richard Bork in 1987. In some cases, appointees withdraw from the process if Senate confirmation seems unlikely. For example, in 2020, Neera Tanden, Biden's appointment as director of the OMB, withdrew from the process following controversy regarding her social media posts. The president can circumvent the advice and consent powers by making recess appointments, which can last up to 2 years. However, in response, the Senate can also hold symbolic pro forma sessions to ensure that it never goes into recess. The second exclusive power of the Senate is the ratification of treaties. The Senate must ratify all international treaties with a 2/3 majority. Since 1789, 2,000 treaties have been ratified, 21 rejected, and 85 withdrawn because they were unlikely to succeed. The most recent treaty rejected by the Senate was the UN Disabilities Rights Convention in 2012 in a 61-38 vote. Some of these exclusive powers contribute to the idea that the Senate is the most powerful or influential chamber of Congress. To what extent is this true? As already mentioned, some of the Senate's distinct influence rests on its exclusive powers, confirmation of presidential appointments, and the ratification of treaties. However, senators also have an advantage over their peers in the House due to their numbers. The smaller size of the Senate means that senators are able to acquire powerful positions more easily than members of the House. These include committee seats and chairmanships. In 2019, members of the House sat on an average of 5.4 committees and subcommittees, while senators sat on 12.9. That is more than double. A third reason for the perception of Senate primacy is its rules of procedure and a practice known as filibustering. In the House, debate rules are regulated by the Rules Committee. It decides the structure of debate, such as speaking time and length of debate. However, the smaller Senate has no limits on speaking time. A senator can speak indefinitely on any subject. The tactic of speaking at length on a subject to delay legislation is called filibustering. A 3/5 majority is needed for cloture, that is, ending a filibuster and moving to a vote. Filibustering can be a very effective means of blocking legislation. For example, the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill, key legislation backed by President Biden, was blocked by a Republican filibuster in 2021. However, if a party holds a Senate supermajority of 60 seats, filibusters are unlikely to be successful. For example, a supermajority helped President Obama pass the Affordable Care Act in 2010. It is also the case that filibusters on executive or judicial appointment confirmations can be ended with a simple majority. This is a process known as the nuclear option. Finally, the smaller size of the Senate means that senators hold more prestige and are able to gain media attention more easily. Only the most prominent members of the House are able to earn national attention. Their ability to gain national attention can be seen in the frequency with which senators run for president. Senators Sanders, Warren, Klobuchar, and Bennett ran for the Democratic nomination for president in 2020, with former Senators Biden and Harris securing the ticket. Only one Democratic vice presidential candidate since 1944 has not been a senator. Geraldine Ferraro was a member of the House. That said, former House members can and do run for presidential office. Examples include Ron DeSantis and Mike Pence in 2024, but both also served as governors previously. While there is a convincing argument that the Senate is more influential than the House, in most cases, both chambers have equal formal powers. They can both enact legislation, initiate constitutional amendments, and conduct executive oversight. In summary, both chambers of Congress hold several powers over the legislative process, and that check the powers of the other branches of government. These include enactment of legislation, appropriations, and the power of the purse, executive oversight, including the impeachment process, veto overrides, and proposing constitutional amendments. The Senate also holds certain exclusive powers, including confirmation of presidential appointments and ratification of treaties. In later lessons, we will examine the extent to which Congress employs its powers and functions effectively.